still. So I'll start with a quick introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Marla Baines. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the youth director for Earth Guardians. Earth Guardians is one of the co-partners that we're putting this beautiful series together. Earth Guardians is a nonprofit organization, EG for short, and with youth at the forefront. We're an intergenerational organization to combat the ecological and climate crisis. One of our main purposes is to train youth to become effective leaders in the social, climate, and environmental justice movements using art, music, storytelling, civic engagement, grassroots action, and legal action to tackle these pressing issues in this day and age. And we're so grateful to be in conversation today with Shinna, Alicia, and Shadi. We'll have them introduce themselves in just a little bit. But before we do that, I'm going to kick it off to my co-moderator and one of my youth council members, Marion, who I work very closely with and very much admire her voice and her willpower to do this work. So I'm going to kick it off to you, Marion.
Well, thank you for the intro, Marlo. Hi, everyone. My name is Marion Mejia. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am one of the youth leaders with Earth Guardians, and it is a pleasure to be here moderating this panel and sharing the space with you all. And thank you all for joining us for this inaugural panel of this series, The Power of the Plant, Hemp as an Eco-Solution. The enormity of the climate crisis does sometimes leave us looking for where or how we can make a difference now that will impact the future in a positive and regenerative way. Hemp is one of the most ancient resources known to humans and provides a ready and immediate answer in terms of where to begin. We have gathered some of the leading voices here today and throughout our panels in applying hemp to the challenges of climate change, and the discussions that lie ahead in our series will awaken our collective understanding of how hemp can provide answers to questions that we all grapple with and provide surprising answers. I would like to thank our partner, Moon Mother Hemp, for launching the solution-based series with us. Moon Mother Hemp is a leading wellness company based in Boulder, Colorado, that creates a wide range of full-spectrum hemp-based products grown on their organic farm. From seed to sale, Moon Mother Hemp brings the power of the plant to people everywhere. We will also have a few minutes at the end of the discussion to answer any questions that any of you in the audience may have. And please feel free to also put questions directly into the chat. But before we fully begin, I do want to hand it off to our panelists. If they can each please tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the hemp path and what you're currently working on. And whoever's feeling called to start first.
I can jump in. My name is Alicia Fall, and I am Eastern Band Cherokee Tsalagi Taino. And I am the founder and vision holder for Her Many Voices Foundation. We are a nonprofit based in Boulder, Colorado, and have been around for about 12 years, a little more than 12 years now. Hemp grabbed a hold of me a few years ago, and I had the pleasure of really getting my hands dirty to build a structure. And that's where the calling really hit. I went from doing my research and making it a conceptual plant to really being fully submerged in it and really practicing every day and listening to what this plant had to offer. So we've been working in the education world with hemp for maybe going on 4 years now. And we've got a couple of projects happening in Haiti, as well as here in Colorado, and working on launching something in upstate New York.
Hi, my name is Sheena Fortner, and I am the founder of Equinox Solutions. I'm based in the Appalachian Mountains here in Asheville, North Carolina. Equinox Solutions is a hub, a mechanism for entrepreneurs, investors. And what we do is we cultivate solutions for climate change. I'm also one of the founders for Carbon Market Exchange, and we have a vertically integrated regenerative agriculture CBD retail line called Terpene Valley. Why I was involved, or why I'm involved in hemp, is I have a Juris Doctorate from Vermont Law School. I've worked on cases such as the Keystone XL. I've worked on the Oak Flat for the Apache. And most recently, I was at Standing Rock working on Red Pond Palace's case. And at that time, I realized that I was spending a lot of time fighting the problem, and decided that I wanted to invest my energy and time and resources in cultivating a solution.
Thank you, Sheena. Shadi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there. Hi, Marlo. Yes, my name's Shadi Ramey, and I am basically like a big hemp nerd. I just recently self-published a book called Hemp Can Change the World. And it's a cookbook. It's called Action. And yeah, so I've been working on that and spreading the gospel of hemp. That's part of my current work right now as a high vibe nutrition. And I also have a very long and big background in product development and sustainable packaging, ethical supply chain management, B Corp, mission-driven business is part of my work. And so I got into the hemp space because I wanted to open a dispensary for THC, and it was so cost prohibitive, and so it just wasn't an option for us. And someone was like, someone's making hemp coffee. And I was like, what does that even mean? You know? So got into it then and started growing and do product development and play with food, and just super grateful to be connected with the plant and here today with all of you having this awesome conversation.
Thank you, everybody. I'm super excited to be on this call and be moderating this beautiful panel. To start us off into the more informative questions, I wanted to ask you, Sheena, what can you tell us about hemp's history in this country, and what role do you see hemp playing in the mitigation of climate change currently?
That's a great question. I'll just do a little bit of an overview. Starting in the 1700s in the United States, there was actually a period in time where people were forced to grow hemp. And then if we fast forward to the 1900s, we realized that the oil and gas industry started to become major players. For example, in the 1700s, of course, the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp. And then the big players within gas and oil, the paper industry changed things dramatically. And that caused the drastic decline. And then, of course, the illegal nature. I believe at one point, hemp until recently, 2014 and 2018, it was considered a Scheduled I drug, similar to something as LSD, opiates, things of that nature. So the industry in and of itself really created an ironclad fist that halted the propagation of hemp in the US. And so on to that of climate change and how hemp can assist in climate mitigation. For example, 1 acre of fiber grown can sequester anywhere from 10 to 15 metric tons of CO2. And of course, this is an annual crop rotation. This is something that is sequestered within a short time span. Within the US, we usually only have 1 growing season. In several countries, we may have 2 to 3 growing seasons. Not only are we looking at CO2 sequestration, biofuels, hemp can be used as a diesel substitute. It can be used as a biopolymer to rid us of especially single-use plastics. And of course, for all of our paper products, food, medicine, all of those things. And so currently in the US, we've seen a major shift. From 2014 and 2018, former President Donald Trump in December did sign into this farm bill, which legalized hemp at that current state. And then, of course, under the Biden administration, we are seeing the Democratic Party really pushing to decrease. I believe it's over $2 billion in tax breaks that the oil and gas industry has received for eons. Since early 1900s, not necessarily that extent. However, current day, I think the value is over $2 billion. So once we do see that decline of subsidies, the hemp industry can obtain some solid footing to fight climate mitigation in the US.
Wow, thank you so much. I feel like so much knowledge that I didn't even know, just about how even the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp, and how, we even see these repressive industries coming in, trying to squash something that is like so beautiful, and how it's resurging now in this day and age. It's really something. All right, Marian, I'll pass back over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sheena, for sharing that with us and walking us through a little bit of that history for sure. Alicia, can you share with us some of the most prominent environmental impacts of hemp?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it would take probably the next couple of hours to go through all of those things. But what we recognize is that hemp is truly an extremely resilient plant, right? It's naturally resistant to diseases as well as many insects. And farmers don't have to use chemicals on it, right? So we know that when we use chemicals, pesticides, fungicides, they have disastrous effects on the environment. They affect our soil, our water, air contaminants. And when that happens, the result in biodiversity is affected. There is a reduction there. And when that happens, then we see illnesses of people and planet, right? As Sheena was talking about, we have the issues of climate change. When we affect our biodiversity, it's only a matter of time before we experience things like we are experiencing today in climate change. It also affects our food security as well as the food production. Now, one of the beautiful things of working with hemp is that it is really kind to the water system. It does not need much water compared to the larger industries like the soybean industry or the cotton industry. And when you think about it, just to make a t-shirt and a pair of pants with cotton, we're talking about roughly 2 pounds of fiber, and that's roughly around 5,300 gallons of water. 5,300 gallons of water for just over 2 pounds of fiber. As opposed to hemp, we're talking about 80 gallons of water. And a lot of that is rainwater. So you can see that there's a tremendous amount of difference between the two. Hemp also gives back to the soil. So there's a lot of nutrient lost in the processing of our food because of how we farm today. If you leave that hemp, let it go back in there, it replenishes the soil. It creates a healthier soil and we deal with less erosion on it. It's also a wonderful phytoremediator. As Sheena was talking about, it carbon sequests. It carbon sequests 5 times greater than the average tree. And you think about it, it takes maybe 20 to 50 years for that tree, for that forest to grow, as opposed to 100 to 120 days for hemp to grow to maturity, to do 4 to 5 times greater carbon sequestering than the trees. And right now, across the planet, we lose about 50,000 trees every minute. Every minute. By the end of this conversation, we will have lost somewhere around 450,000 trees, 500,000 by the end of this conversation. Excuse me, 4.5 million trees by the end of this conversation. So it has a huge effect. We get to slow down the deforestation across the planet with this plant.
Wow, thank you, Alicia. As somebody who also kind of geeks out about climate solutions, I feel like hemp has, so many different purposes that we can use, especially when it comes to the way that it's very resilient and also, supportive of the products that it uses, like water. So the next question I wanted to ask was to Shadi. What trends are you seeing globally with hemp?
Thank you. Some of the trends that I'm seeing are certainly around food, seeing more and more products, like shelf-stable products, coming up with a new hemp variety or like a hemp version. Certainly, working to spread the gospel of hemp as high vibe nutrition. We're trying to do that right now. That's definitely a trend. There's a lot happening with sustainable building materials where hemp's concerned, certainly with hempcrete, also with like hemp batting for insulation. Also, there's a lot happening with what people call bioplastics and hemp, and also like hemp wood. There's a lot of hemp wood kind of products coming up right now. Also, like kind of in that same vein, like I've just seen like cool like kitchen and housing, like little light switches and switch plates that are coming out kind of that are hemp, and certainly medicine. I mean, and yeah, just seeing lots of trends with, I think there's people are getting a lot more creative with the kinds of products that they're putting out and using different kinds of traditions and kind of like really getting, yeah, I just think people are doing lots of cool things with full spectrum hemp extract. And so those are some of the trends that I've been noticing.
Awesome. Thank you, Shadi. That's really cool. And I'm really hoping that, we can see more of that in the mainstream. I feel like I haven't seen too much conversation around all those things surrounding hemp. Sheena, can you describe for us where is the United States compared to others in its advancements in the hemp industry?
Yes, the United States, as we realize, the last time hemp was grown legally in the U.S., I believe it was in Wisconsin in like 1957. So if you can imagining abandoning a project since the 1950s, and now we're resurfacing and trying to figure out where are we going and what are we doing, and we're far behind in technology. The Farm Bill, of course, China in particular is the largest producer in the world of hemp. I believe their fiber industry is worth $1.9 billion. And that was just last year, a couple of years ago. It's up and coming in the US, it's up and coming. So since 2018, I believe the numbers in 2019. So if you can imagine, the floodgates were opened in 2018. Now it's legal, people can grow hemp. And so the market became saturated in 2019. There's farmers who still have crop from probably 2 years ago. And so you really have like a bottleneck effect. In the US, it's kind of the age-old question, did the chicken or the egg come first? And in the hemp industry, we need both right now. And so what we're seeing is this bottleneck effect of production. I believe one of the largest decorticator facilities in the United States was in Kentucky, and last year it went bankrupt. So if you can imagine all of these farmers who are growing fiber, there's a market for it. However, there's not necessarily the processing infrastructure to meet that demand. So if we could convince the United States government to move all of the $2 billion tax break from oil and gas and put it into renewables, I'm sure that the United States would be the largest producer in the world. If we just look at merely land mass. So if you look at the land mass, Russia has the largest land mass, then Canada, then China, and then the United States. So we could actually take the Midwest, which is becoming somewhat of a dust bowl, and utilizing hemp to provide regenerative agriculture, to build the soil. If only we had the infrastructure, the demand is there. There's a worldwide demand. I just saw last week, China saying anything, any hemp fiber that the US produces that they're willing to buy. It's just how many farmers are capable of putting that amount of money required to really get this off the ground. It's very hopeful. It's very hopeful in the US.
Yeah, I think it comes to that age-old question. I mean, we even see this within the climate justice movement about how much education do we do, and then how much action. And I mean, you need all the things to happen cohesively and together to move this forward, this conversation, new industries, new practices, and just new norms within society. So I see even this conversation continuing to create that positive impact in this kind of ripple effect in terms of the conversation that we're starting here today as well. Great, so I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Alicia. You know, as you were talking about with biodiversity, you know, I know that indigenous populations actually are some of the greatest caretakers of this earth, and of course, back to, you know, our indigenous tribal, you know, knowledge about how to you know, collaborate with the earth, that the earth is here for us, but we're not owning the earth. So I wanted to ask you, how do you see hemp impacting the indigenous world? And what benefits do you see it bringing Native and indigenous people?
Well, if we look back and we do our history, right, we can realize that indigenous peoples for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we all on this planet have been using this plant. We may have called it something a little different, but we've all used it. And the moment it was made illegal, it was another way to oppress indigenous peoples. So bringing it back into the fold, there's an opportunity for us to go back to the economic resources that we were providing for ourselves. You know, back in the day, before the European invasion, we were able to have one nation, one tribe had commerce with another. I have this resource, you have that resource, we can do an exchange. That was taken away when we removed hemp. We have the ability to go back to that today. And there is no reason why in the world we can't. On some reservations, you have 2 or 3 different nations on that reservation. So why not? You're over here growing seed, you're growing for flour, for food, you're growing for fiber, for materials to wear, you're growing for hempcrete structures. Why not boost that economy again, right? It has a strong potential. And we also need to stop looking at, now that it's coming back into the fold, who are we to decide how much THC should be in a plant, how much of this should be in a plant, how much, you know, we have to cap things out in order for make it legalized in certain areas. And these are arbitrary numbers. 0.3% is an arbitrary number that came out of France for a particular reason there. So we have to think about these things. We have something that Mother gave us in full perfection, and yet we feel like we know better than she does. And every time we take that stance, we destroy a tremendous amount of what we have available and destroy a tremendous amount of access for people and passing on their traditions and their knowledge. I sit here and I'm in reflection. There's a gentleman by the name of Alex Whiteplum who started growing this plant 20 some years ago before it was made illegal. And time again, the authorities came and destroyed it. Now there's a little bit of hope. I'm sure he's tired at this point, fighting a system for 20 some years, but there's hope. And I see hope in people like Muriel Youngbear, who is really a young woman leading the way for Indigenous peoples, working with this plant, reminding us of why we were given this plant and how we get to work with each other, right? We are connected to the plant. So it's a constant reminder of who we are in connection with nature.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you for that reminder too, of just having to listen, really listen to each other and also learn in that way as well. And kind of related to hemp and like learning about it, Shadi, turning it to you, can you share what are some of the common misconceptions around hemp?
Yes, thank you. I would say one of the ones that comes to mind first is that that hemp is not cannabis. That hemp is not cannabis is a misconception that happens a lot. And I think that erroneously early on in the industry, something I've noticed was where people in the hemp industry wanted to really say that it was this separate thing. That it wasn't cannabis and that it wasn't marijuana. And I think that a lot of people who traditionally have been conservative and anti-cannabis then were like, they want to get in on the game and they're willing to try it. And that might be fine, but that's definitely a common misconception. And to me, it goes back to this whole issue of decriminalizing nature and and basically just misleading people around the plant and what many people believe to be the tree of life, which is cannabis, and hemp is the same plant. Another misconception that I come up with obviously is that hemp can get you high on that flip side. And so with my cookbook, it's super interesting because the recipes are like hemp hearts or include different parts of the plant, and people are still, like trepidatious in many instances that like I would be, giving them some kind of infused food without telling them, and like, which I would never do. The Mad Hatter never does. You never do that when you're the Mad Hatter. So I think that's another thing. Another misconception is that some people think that you can get good CBD and good hemp products at a gas station. And I'm partially joking, but I think there's still so much education that needs to be done around the products that people are consuming. And I think that when we go into the store, the misconception for any product, and certainly those that include all forms of cannabis, is that things are safe for us, that they're in the store, they're on the shelf, they must be safe. And I really always caution people to do more research. And certainly where hemp is concerned, when all of your cannabis is concerned, like who's growing your hemp? Where is your hemp being grown? What are the practices in the grow that you're supporting? Also, what's the extraction process of the hemp? And then also, what are the value-added ingredients that you're adding to that are being added to the products that you're consuming as medicine? So these are some of the misconceptions which I think are, pretty dangerous. And again, it's an issue of education and empowerment.
Wow. I just love that you were bringing up that. Again, I think it comes back to something that I think keeps popping up in this conversation about that there needs to be a connection with the land and this plant. And it can't just be because of some store that you're going to go buy it at. No, you just have to think like, what is this company and what is this plant offering us? And so this brings me to our next question. Sheena, I'm going to pass it over to you. I have a feeling we may have some new hemp fanatics on here. And, you know, I know personally I'm getting excited, like, what can I do to kind of help this hemp industry, as well as do my own personal, you know, hemp growing. So can anyone grow, use, and, well, how, can anyone grow and process hemp, and how could they use it if they do?
Yes, uh, so under the USDA Farm Bill of 2018, it states that anything under 0.3% THC is hemp. Now, who is able to possess this? We'd love to say everyone in the United States, considering it's a federal regulation. North Carolina last year, I believe, tried to say that all of the hemp products are legal except flour. They're not the only state that did this. And so with that being said, who's able to possess? I would say check with your local state regulations as far as who is able to grow. The USDA has delegated those authorities usually to the Department of Agriculture, depending on what state you're in. So the process, I've also grown hemp for a few years myself. And the process is you apply to your Department of Agriculture state application. Some states, and I believe it could possibly be a federal mandate, that if you have a criminal crime, drug-related crime within the past X number of years, you're not allowed to grow. These things, obviously, same thing with voting rights, not the topic of discussion today. Nonetheless, there are regulations that are put on ones with prior criminal offenses. So to answer your question, in several states, you do not need a processing license. A lot of times they will have you write in a simple, like an MOU or an LOI with your intent to process. Once again, anyone that wants to grow, please call your Department of Agriculture, reference your state specifics, and they should be able to provide you with an application, whether you need it for processing. Some states, like I said, do not require. Most states, all states require a grower's license. And I would highly recommend everyone to pick up the phone and to get to know their local extension branch. A lot of the individuals in the Department of Ag within Tennessee and North Carolina that I personally have dealt with, they're looking for information also. It's a new industry. It's not corn or soybeans, and it's something that has been grown in the U.S. for many years. So I definitely would highly recommend to reach out to your local extension office, Department of Ag, and they would be happy to answer these questions.
Awesome, thank you for that. So everybody, check in with your local state govs and see what the rules are, depending on your probably municipality and where you're located and what state you're living in. All right, Shadi, you said you wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sheena. I just wanted to add that in Colorado, specifically, in Colorado, I just want to say that there's a lot of work to be done still, and that hemp is in Colorado less free than cannabis THC. In fact, I've been boycotting. I just boycotted for this last year because I wanted to, but you have to, anybody in Colorado can grow up to 6 medicinal THC plants, but you have, and just at your house as a citizen, this is your right to grow an herb. However, in the state of Colorado now, in order to have a hemp license, you have to spend $500 with the Department of Ag, and you need to show them your latitude, longitude, and then everything is under this like ridiculous bureaucratic mire. So still, we still not free, and we still need to do a lot of work, and it's less free than cannabis THC at the moment here. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you for that,
Wow.
Shad.
Oh, sorry, Marla, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, as somebody who typically is in Colorado, live there, it's good to know about those little things that the state government like to try to slip in there. Alicia, yes. Your hand
So
is-
I also wanted to add, because I was sitting here thinking the same thing, Shadi, being in Colorado, you get 6 plants, but you also have to check on where you live. Like I'm in a large complex, and although it is legal and we should be able to, within the complex, there it's stipulated you are not allowed to grow. So always check those little details.
Wow, that's so interesting. I didn't share this earlier, but I live in California, here in the Bay Area. And we have that 6 plant law as well, but now it makes me curious about what our hemp laws here are like in California specifically. So I'm learning things, y'all. Thank you. This question, Alicia, is for you. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only panel you'll be sharing with us. And if you can remind us of who you're working with and why.
So as far as communities are concerned, I work with predominantly indigenous communities. And right now I've got a project, I can't go into too much detail, but I am working on a climate change, climate strong initiative here in Denver, Colorado, with a organization called UBR, Universal Basic Resource. We have partnered up for a particular project. And as a matter of fact, I will be having a meeting with the city council, the mayor's council next month, in hopes of moving forward with this. And like Sheena was saying, a lot of the issue that we have is in processing, and that is part of what we're going to be discussing. I've been working in Haiti since the quake of 2010, and we have been doing little by little experiments around different seeds down in Haiti. And as a matter of fact, we just sent someone down maybe 3-4 weeks ago with more seed to different regions that we're working in there. And when we work with that community, we are working predominantly with women in their communities. And then we also have been taking some steps with upstate New York with a couple of members of the Mohawk community. And the intent there is to not only do education, but to also build a longhouse out of hempcrete. So that's who I'm working with as far as the people, the communities we're serving. As far as other partners that I'm working with, we have a Marichanve Hempcast, and they do construction. They do not only tamping the hemp, but they also do spraying of the hemp, which is a pretty new way of using the hempcrete. Escher Designs, they are an architectural firm, and they designed the very first hemp structure here in Denver, Colorado, which I had the pleasure of getting my hands involved with. And then the US Hemp Building Association. And then Hempcrete, which is out of, Hemp Point out of the Czech Republic with Hanna Gabrielova, who's one of the top leading females internationally on hemp. And Oblisk Farm, who is out of Latvia. They have a wonderful, wonderful family farm out there. And there are a couple of other smaller organizations that we've been partnering with. It's a whole lot of, if we all come together, we all do our little part, it makes a big difference in the world. And so those are the organizations, the people, and the businesses that I've been working with, that Her Many Voices has had the pleasure of spending time with over these last few years. And we learn something new every single day, every single day.
Wow, thank you, Alicia. That's some super powerful work. Yeah, I really appreciate you speaking on that. So before we open it up for Q&A, I have one more question for the whole group. And as we did at the beginning, feel free to just kind of pipe in when you're ready. You've laid out such a wonderful a wonderful industry, a wonderful plant, and a plant that can connect us back to the earth as a climate solution and as something that we can use and be very much in gratitude to. So my final question for you guys is, what is your vision for hemp's future, and how can activists like Earth Guardians work to bring these solutions to fruition? And whoever feels called to go first, go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in. I lost you for a split second, Marlo. I heard, how can Earth Guardians participate? I missed what you said before then.
All right, I'll restate the question then.
Okay.
What is your vision for hemp's future, and how can activists and fellow citizens like Earth Guardians work to bring these solutions to fruition?
I would love for us to be in a situation where we have processing on local level. And so the farmers, which there are many in this country who want to grow, can do it, having that confidence of knowing they have a way of processing, whether it's fiber, dense fiber to create clothing, all the way down to the powder, right, for plastics and that sort of thing. I just read this week in Hemp Today that out of Italy, they're taking the dust from hemp and making leather bags, hemp leather bags out of it. So this plant offers a tremendous amount. If you just go down the train of it from the dense fiber all the way down to the powder, you have a tremendous amount that you can use with this, use for this plant. And as far as participation is concerned, I would certainly encourage not only Earth Guardians, but call your local officials. Make sure everyone has access to this plant. We should not be under the scrutiny that we are under. We don't have this if you want to grow an apple tree. We don't have this if you want to grow bamboo. The laws was set in motion to control. This was a power move. We need to take that power back, and we need to speak on behalf of this plant. So that is one of the main reasons, main ways that Earth Guardians and others can participate. And then as far as our organization is concerned, we put projects together where it's travel with a purpose. So if you have an interest in traveling with us to these locations that we're working in, we would be more than happy to have you participate that way as well.
Thank you, Licia.
I think that the vision of hemp for our future is to help assist us to become carbon neutral. Hemp, and at the same time, I say this with somewhat of a hesitancy. First and foremost, we as a nation, as a world, need to come together and understand the impact of our consumption. I don't want to say this very naively and say everything that's made out of plastic can be made out of hemp. First and foremost, our connection to our consumption from beginning to end, the real value, the real cost of what it is that we do consume. And in particular with Equinox Solutions, we are teaming up with Carbon Market Exchange, CME, to help subsidize hemp farmers until we can receive these tax break incentives. We can help subsidize the fiber industry by offering carbon offset credits. And that in and of itself will help propel the fiber, the biopolymer, the hempcrete. It'll help drive this industry. Currently, hemp as far as CBD and extraction, there's several extraction facilities in the U.S. and I do envision the same becoming equivalent with the fiber industry, decorticators. As far as Earth Guardians and the activists, really to push and to make a stand, even in Appalachia here, where we see environmental degradation. Let us not forget that hemp can rejuvenate the soil. All of the toxins that have been put in. This is an environmental action in and of itself by us planting hemp to heal ourselves, to heal this planet, and by education, all of us coming together here today and vocalizing these issues and creating solution based instead of all of us focusing all of our time and energy on the problems. All of us coming together and start creating solutions.
Thank you, Sheena. Shadi, would you like to end us off with the formal question answering?
Sure. I mean, for me, my vision for hemp is that it's legal and that the plant is free and decriminalized and flourishing, and that that the industry is run by people who are in relationship with the plant and respect the goddess mother, and that hemp is replacing hemp products are replacing destructive fossil fuel products across the board. That's my vision for hemp. That's my dream. As far as Earth Guardians, young activists, I think that find your high vibe tribe, like find your people. There are some really, really great people doing amazing works. And there's some really sketchy, dodgy people that we could do other episodes about, but we're not because we're going to stay lifted. But really find the good people doing the good works that you vibe with. And yeah, and I think there's still so much room in the industry, and like go for it to make things happen. And again, back to what Sheena said, is to keep pushing. Like we still have so much work to do. We really, really do. And the plant's not free and we're not free. And as long as nature's not free, there's something fundamentally wrong. And the climate crisis, we don't have any time. We got to go right now. And I wanted to say that if anybody wants to get involved with the work that we're doing with Hemp Can Change the World, please get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sheena, Alicia, and Shadi. So in our last few minutes here, 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to open it up to the audience to ask questions. So the best way to go about this is if you have a question, feel free to either throw it in the chat or raise your hand. And then Marion and I will do our best to get all of the questions answered. I do know we have some from the chat, so we'll start with those. But before we begin, Alicia, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, for those of you who are not aware, Her Many Voices had a large Earth Day event this past week. And we have video up on Facebook, in particular, YouTube and Facebook. You will be able to see, I think we have 5 or 6 people from all over the globe who will be presenting on hemp. Everything from a workshop of how to make hemp paper from Latvia to consumerism from Eric McKee, the founder of the US Hemp Building Association. So check out the videos, and you can certainly find out a lot more by watching them.
Great, thank you so much, Alicia. So we had a few questions come up in the chat throughout the conversation, so we'll start with those. Again, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and I will try to call on you as best to my ability, or Marion will. So to start off the Q&A, and this can go towards anybody. Somebody asked, thank you for hosting this. I'm curious about sustainable farming practices for hemp. Where I live here in Southern Oregon, the cannabis industry is so full of plastic use, from irrigation tubes to greenhouse plastic sheets to plastic bags and gloves, etc. Is there anyone who can speak to this? And I would guess, are there any solutions that people are seeing in terms of how to do this a little bit more sustainably when it comes to growing hemp or cannabis?
Hey there, Matt, can I get a little stab? So in my opinion, I think that really comes down to integrity. Sometimes like, I don't want to be, negative, but really, the cannabis industry, just like this person said with an excellent point, is super energy heavy, super plastic heavy. These are like really serious things that we need to be talking about right now. We need to be doing something about it right now. We don't have any more time for learning curve. So we really need to hold the companies. That's what I'm saying. Like, who's growing your hemp? How are they doing your cannabis? These are the questions that we need to ask. And we really need to demand that one of the things that upsets me the most is I feel like sustainable is like one of the most misused and abused terms in the industry, period. And so we really need to demand more. And I think that it really goes back to like intention. We have to have the right intention so that we're doing regenerative agriculture, so that we're giving back more than we take. We have to do that right now. So that's a great point. And those are my thoughts.
Sheena or Alicia, do you want to add anything? Sheena, go ahead.
Sure. I know that the farms that I participate in North Carolina and Tennessee, we only use regenerative agriculture. As Alicia was saying earlier, the amount of water, you don't need to use the amount of pesticides. There's current research being done. In this particular area, we have issues with caterpillars. There are natural insecticides, natural ways, neem, peppermint, things like that, companion planting. There are definitely solutions. And as Shadi was saying, know your grower. The power of consumption. If we realize where it's coming from, what's the intention, what's the motive behind it, then we can change the industry.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. Shadi had mentioned, if you're going to stop at the local gas station, they're going to sell these hemp products, these CBD products. Keep in mind, like Sheena was saying, we need to educate ourselves. I will not consume anything if it's not natural. I'm not interested in putting poisons into something so beautiful as a hemp plant or cannabis, period. You don't want to do that to your body. You don't want to do that to the system. So educate yourself. That is the best way to really combat what we are dealing with all of these plastics, with all of these chemicals. And then start calling your local officials. Be vocal about it, because that's the only way that any of this changes. The ones who have the most effect on us are the larger companies, the larger corporations. We're the ones affected by what they do. And the only way that that's going to change is if we put our money somewhere else and we make ourselves very vocal on what is acceptable and not acceptable.
I wanted to add one more thing. Is it okay, Marlo?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think it's like, there's no more time left for us to have learning curve on being conscious consumers. Like, really, we have to take ownership of who we're giving our money to and who we're supporting. And I think that that's really what this comes down to, is like, we can't just be willy-nilly anymore about things. We need to look for like Sun and Earth certification, excellent organization coming out of the work of David Bronner. That's awesome. They're all about regenerative cannabis. It's called Sun and Earth certification. So yeah, looking for not necessarily like some kind of bureaucratic certification process, but real people doing real good things and trying to bring that intention into practice. That's what I would look for.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We have another audience question that was in the chat. Is there any research as to the continued usefulness of processed hemp when it has been grown on contaminated lands?
Well, you can check out, there's information out there. Chernobyl, we all know the impact of Chernobyl after the spill of that radiation. They used hemp there, right? So this is an area that has documented a tremendous amount of what happened and then what happened after we started planting hemp. And there are other areas, if you go to certain universities, they're going to have a tremendous amount of information on what it means to grow hemp in contaminated soils.
Absolutely. And in addition, I believe the National Center for Biotechnology, and as Elisa said, that many universities are jumping onto this and understanding that the uptake of heavy metals, nitrates, things of that nature, they can do core samples of the hemp after it's being removed and it's contained within the plant. I'd love to see some new research done, especially in this area, mountaintop removal mining sites, nuclear sites, Superfund sites. It's new, and yet it has been done before.
I wanted to add that I think that using the spent contaminant, if we're doing phytoremediation with hemp and then using that spent hemp in a way, maybe with like hemp pellets for instead of using firewood, maybe pet. Yeah, I'm thinking like the hemp pellets would be a really good way because it's not going back into the system. So that's one of my thoughts on that. But again, back to everyone's point on this is back to my point where we really need to be careful about the hemp that we are consuming because of the way that hemp interacts and all this uptake and all the things that we're talking about sucking out of Chernobyl, right? That's why we need to know more about the hemp and where it's coming from and all those things so that we know that what we are being told and touted is medicine is actually medicinal for us and not toxic. That's not popular, but that's something that I talk about every time I speak. And a lot of people don't like it, but I wouldn't be doing my work if I didn't bring that up every time. So I'm glad I got to sneak it in right there.
Great, Shadi.
Yeah, I posed this question because we were discussing doing structures for a community that had tremendous amount of pollution in their soil. And so the response that I was given, my architect was given, is that if you go through 2 to 3 cycles of growing hemp on that land, then by that 3rd to 4th cycle, you should be good to go to use that herd to create a hempcrete structure.
I was going to add, Jessica was saying that hemp building materials are a great end product for this. So I do really appreciate those 2 points that it's very important to understand the medicine of the plant and what it's uptaking. And then there's also a way to use the plant that is also, I would say, neutralizing the soil as well, and being able to reuse that, these beautiful plants. So William, your hand is up. I would love if you could share with us your question.
Thank you. I'm typing notes quickly. Thank you for all the insights and heart-led contributions. I'm learning a lot. I have a complete beginner's mind, but I'm in Maui at the moment, and I've been exploring permaculture design and systems. My studies are in urban planning and design, so I'm making that leap into regenerative and permaculture design systems. Super beginner's mind about it. My question is, and I write fiction as a primary focus in the day, so this is very new to me. My question is, I'm exploring regenerative systems in Hawaii and potentially in Europe and France. Are there resources off mainland? I'm from Los Angeles, but are there resources off mainland, say in Hawaii or in Europe? I think Alicia mentioned two, which I took a note on, that anybody on the call might suggest for those geographic regions where I could resource a little more locally and maybe speak to experts in the topics of today.
William, I would be more than happy to give you direct names and numbers, or email addresses to speak to people, both out in Hawaii and those in the EU.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so if you want to submit your email address to Earth Guardians, or if you want to type it in here, I could certainly pass on the information that you're looking for.
Sure. It would LinkedIn be okay place to reach out on?
Yes, you can reach me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah.
Marlo, for calling on me.
Yeah, thank you.
Sheena, did you have something to add?
Yes, I was just going to suggest the same thing, William. If you would send me your email, I also have contacts of growers on the island of Maui.
Wonderful. Wow. Abundance. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. I love the networking and connections that are happening in this space. Sweet. So our panelists, can you share with us who are some of the congressional reps or senators who have a consciousness around hemp, if any, and how can we help educate them? What legislation should we support? And they say, thank you so much.
For example, of course, Warren, Sanders, Booker, Gardner, it's really dependent upon your particular state. And I would say also in regards to that, to allow us as communities and individuals to create that platform that's needed to put these next representatives into office or to remove them. And so the five that I named, and in addition to do the research and to reach out to the legislators and the senators, and if they're not within congruent or parallel paths, then allow us to reclaim our power as voters and to put those congressional members possibly in if needed.
I know in Colorado, Jared Polis participated in the NOCO event, the Northern Colorado Hemp event, a couple of weeks ago. So he has been supportive along the way. We're hoping that it's the trickle effect of those who are in the local, more of a local community government. They have an awareness and education of what this plant brings to the table and will be open to allow growers to do what they need to do in the community.
I wanted to touch up on the Jared Polis thing real quick, for example, and not to get into it. I love JP. He's my governor. He's awesome. I'm proud of him. He does lots of good works. He also has done not good works, like around fracking, and he like pretty much sold out the anti-fracking activists for some moves that he made back in the day for oil and gas. So I think it's really important that we not let politicians get away with, the work, the things that they're doing that are sketchy and not to the benefit of our planet while we're at a climate crisis point. And so that even if they are doing good work with hemp, that's amazing, but we still want to know that they're doing this other work, which protects the planet and keeps the water for the hemp and the air and everything safe so that we can grow the medicine.
Great. I think it's always important to talk about, making sure the right people are in office to, support the people, make sure that but that we also keep them accountable. it's always an important message to remember, and that no politician's going to save us or the climate, but we have to just continually collaborate as people and people power. So one of our second to last questions, somebody asked, and I thought that this could be, a good conversation or question to have answered. Somebody asked, I have a social work background working a lot with addictions. I've not heard how to deal with the mind-altering aspects of marijuana and the potential irresponsible use of marijuana/hemp for those purposes. Would somebody feel free to, or feel like they would like to answer that question?
I wanted to say that I think that there's a lot of room here, again, for education. I feel like everything goes back to education, which is the foundation of how we empower ourselves and move forward in the world. So I think that when I find myself like wanting something every day, I'm like, uh-oh, I better check that, because that's not good. Whether that's, for me, that could be caffeine, that might be maybe things that like have an addictive quality or something that I want to do every day. And so I think that this sugar, I think the same thing goes for, and I know that sugar is more harmful to human beings than cannabis, but again, it's like an education issue. So I think that we can just do our best to educate ourselves. And I think that when we're talking about like mental health and social work, like people need to be balanced. And I think that it's a weird and sick, twisted society where somebody can get on an airplane with a bunch of white pills and an orange bottle, and that is absolutely, completely acceptable. But that if you get on the plane with the plants in almost many places in the country, you're actually committing a felony. So I think that, again, like if consuming cannabis helps people in today's insane world. I mean, we're like in an insane universe right now. And if a little bit of cannabis takes the edge off for someone, I think that's amazing. But I do think that anything in excess is not us being high vibe and high vital. And I think that goes for cannabis as well, just like it does for everything else.
Alicia and then Sheena, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like Shadi said, anything in moderation, right? Addictions are addiction, and it doesn't matter whether it's over food or a particular drug or over a plant, a tea, whatever it is. If we have to get to the core root of why am I doing something to this extent, right? And also recognizing this plant is a whole lot less harmless, yes, than an abuse of sugar or many other things. So we have to acknowledge that. And we have to look at the fact that there's been a bias on this plant for many years, and there's a particular reason behind it. When it was made illegal in 1937, it was made illegal by the director of the Drug Enforcement Agency at the time, Harry Engslinger. And he started spreading rumors. When our white women smoke this, they, listen to jazz music and they lose themselves. When Black men smoke this, they think they are as good as white men. When our derelict Mexicans smoke this, I mean, it was done intentionally. And you know what? People in this country drank the Kool-Aid and made decisions about it, and have made some judgments along the way around it. It was demonized for all of those reasons, all of the lies that were spread before. So it gets to be, I know a number of vets who are dealing with PTSD. I know a number of people who are dealing with traumas in their life who use this plant in a medicinal way. If you recognize it as medicine and not as escapism like anything else, it is healing for you and those around you. Once you abuse something, it's no longer medicine. So we have to keep that in mind. And there are plenty of doctors out there who recognize the power of this as a medicine, and people can speak with them.
Great. Yeah, I would just like to add that currently, the armed forces, I believe in particular, the Navy has taken it upon themselves to consider CBD as a possibility to eliminate or alleviate PTSD. And of course, everything in moderation, elevate, not vegetate, and everything that we do in our society. And I'm sure those who are currently affected by addiction to speak to a local herbalist. Maybe one should start with an herbalist versus an MD, and to seek remedies from natural plant medicines.
And I would add, if you are on medications, if you're on antidepressants, if you're on things like that, do speak to your doctor, but make sure your MD is aware of cannabis. There are too many out there who have no idea and they just say, no, it's not good. You can't do it. Here's another pill. So make sure you go to someone who is aware of what the interaction is going to be.
Thank you guys so much for those very in-depth answers and really speaking on the power again that this plant has. And somebody also growing up in this generation, Gen Z, who has been around with, grown up with technology, grown up and, very much political disruption. Something that can happen is we see, these high rates of anxiety and depression within, my fellow peers. And I have friends who personally are able to support themselves by being able to use, CBD and THC. And so I think it's very important to name the beauty that this plant can give to people, and also remembering to have a connection with it. So, anything, if it's abused, can become poison, but in moderation, it also can be medicine. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you guys so much. And Marian, go ahead.
I think that we are about time for our panel. And I do want to thank you all for being here. Big virtual applause for our panelists today, for sharing the space with us, and just being able to connect with all of you and engaging with all of you. I for sure learned a lot today. And we do have more panels coming up. This was just our kickoff panel for this series. I believe Kelly was dropping links into the chat to register for our upcoming panels. Next month, we have on May 27th is our next panel on hemp as a catalyst for justice and equity at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Are there any other closing comments from any of the panels? Marlo, Moon Mother?
Again, just a huge, big appreciation for you, Sheena, Alicia, and Shadi. You've made my heart bloom and explode with the knowledge and the wisdom that you guys brought into the space. So just really appreciate it. And yeah, just so thankful for our partners. Thank you, Jessica. And some panels I talk on, it feels good to have a good panel, and this was definitely one of them. All right, Jessica, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of the speakers, to Marlo, and to Marian for hosting us and for running the show today. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. It's great to connect with you. I don't know if you saw in the chat, there's a Colorado Department of Agriculture hearing tomorrow. Please try to join that if you'd like to find a way to get involved. That's step one, getting straight to the government, the Colorado Department of Agriculture. There are a lot of changes coming our way from the CDPHE and the Department of Agriculture that are not so much in our favor. So jumping on there could be a helpful start. Anyway, I just want to say thank you. I'm Jessica and I'm done speaking.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate everybody who stuck around for the whole thing, and for those of you who had to jump in and jump out. I hope that we can see some familiar names and faces at our next one in the upcoming months. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.